Hey, hello everybody on Zoom. We are getting settled in here at the IMA, and we're waiting for everybody to stop talking so we can do the talk. All right. So, thank you. This is the Alchemy Arts Winter 2025 Artist in Residence Artist Talk Series, and it is in collaboration with the San Juan Islands Museum of Art, and we're really grateful for them for hosting us. And this program is really cool and we love it. And we've got two artists presenting today. We've got Ella Rose Avery and Isai Soto. And Ella Rose is going to go first. And I'm going to read her bio and I'm going to try to read it slow. Ella Rose is a multi-disciplinary artist raised and residing in the San Francisco Bay Area. Drawing is the foundation of her creative practice. She melds observed reality with her inner fantasies, valuing exploration over perfection. When Ella Rose is not inside making, she likes to be outside playing. So that's Ella Rose, and we are gonna move over, and I'm gonna try to figure out how to do this with Isai's help to Ella Rose's presentation. Although maybe before I screen share, I should show Ella Rose's face to the people. Although I guess she'll pop over here and then you guys will be able to see. Okay. All right. Here you go.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Hi. It was so fun. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you, Alchemy. Thank you, Katie, Tech Wizard. Thank you, Isai, Tech Wizard. Thank you, Museum. Thank you, San Juan Island. It's been amazing being here. I'm so happy to present. I wanted to just start with a land acknowledgement. So if you listen, I do not have a slide for this, but here we go. Let us acknowledge that we live and work in the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary treaty territories of many Coast Salish peoples, who hold rights and responsibilities to these lands and waters. We continue to learn about these relationships and recognize that the boundaries of today are of colonial making and do not reflect Indigenous peoples' traditional relationship to land, governance, and territories. We recognize our benefit and express our gratitude. Thank you. Okay. Humor and materiality. So this theme was chosen for Isai and I based off of the portfolios we applied to Alchemy with, and was a really fun structure to present on. It's not a history of all the art I've ever made. It's a little more specific. Chapter 1, An Abridged History. Hi. I'm actually going to start not with my own history, but with some California history, because I'm a big believer in history. So, my name is Ella Rose Avery. I was born on March 3rd, 1998 in Berkeley, California. I still live in Berkeley, California. I'm 5'9". I like to draw every single day. Berkeley, if you don't know, is across the water from San Francisco. It is called the East Bay. This is a picture of the East Bay from the East Bay Hills. I know the lighting's a little hard to see, but you're positioned up in the hills looking out across the East Bay. Then there's the San Francisco Bay itself, and then across from that is the city of San Francisco. If you actually look on the very far right next to that temperature box, that's about where my house is. Um, I am fifth generation Californian, fourth generation from the Bay Area. And rather than go through the past 27 years of my life before this residency, I want to share a little bit about the history of where I am from. I know it's supposed to be an artist talk, but I just believe that where I'm from is a really influential part of who I am. And also, since coming here to Washington State for the first time in my life, I was reminded I'm not in California, which it's usually hard to get out of California. And maybe some of you don't know as much California history, so I thought I'd teach about it. I just think that it's a really big influence on my personhood, much more so than my distant European mutt mix. And maybe you'll be visiting the Bay Area sometime. And as a place here that has lots of tourists, we have lots of tourists also. And it's nice when someone shows up who knows a little bit of history. Okay, back to the beginning. First people. The first people in the Bay Area were the Chichenyo, if you look actually in the slide on the left side, the Chichenyo is what is like present day East Bay. It's a division of the indigenous Ohlone people of Northern California. So you can kind of compare. So if you look, Berkeley, Oakland was very much Chichenyo. The Ohlone have lived in the Bay Area for the past 10,000 years. It's a collective of around 50 separate tribes that are related languages. So similar to here, we're many, many different tribes, different languages around a body of water. Currently, the collective umbrella name is Ohlone, but that is a little bit contentious. And of course, there are Ohlone people living presently in the Bay Area today. Next, Spanish colonized California. The Spanish colonization was about from the end of the 17th century to the mid 19th century. They enslaved the native people all along the coast in order to build missions, Catholic missions. This is Mission Dolores, which is in San Francisco. You may have heard of Dolores Park, which is a very famous location right next to the mission and is essentially the location of a permanent party. This is Dolores Park on an average random Sunday. All right, jumping ahead, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo was in 1848. That was the end of the Spanish-American War, where Spain/Mexico seceded. California and all of the Southwest states used to be Mexico. But this is that 1848 is when those areas become the United States of America. This happens to be the same year that gold is found in California. So people start immigrating to California from all over the entire world to try and strike it rich. The mass gathering of gold miners is what really turns San Francisco from basically just a mission to a city. California becomes a state in 1850 because of this massive economic and population growth of the gold rush. This is an image of people drying prunes in the South Bay in 1908. My great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, immigrated to California shortly after the gold rush from Quebec. My great-grandmother was born a little bit outside of the Bay Area in 1998, 100 years before I was born. And she spent pretty much the entire 20th century in the Bay Area, or around there. Continuing the timeline, significant cultural influences of San Francisco and the greater Bay Area. San Francisco is known as one of the queerest places in the USA. Why is that? Why? Well, we can thank the US military for helping start the community. It's true, particularly during the First and Second World Wars, the Navy had a practice of dishonorably charging queer sailors in the port of San Francisco. This was called a blue discharge. And this is truly actually how the queer community got its footing. And many young queer people still specifically moved to the Bay Area for this reason. The Bay Area is also very much known for its civil rights history and counterculture. This is a photo of the Black Panther Party, which was founded in 1966 in Oakland. The party created social programs, including free breakfast for children, education, community health clinics. They were huge advocates for the class struggle and claimed to represent the proletarian vanguard. The FBI sabotaged the party with an illegal and covert counterintelligence program of surveillance, infiltration, perjury, and police harassment to undermine the party, and eventually assassinated in '69 two of the original leaders, Fred Hampton and Mark Clark. Here's another example of the civil rights and counterculture of the Bay Area. UC Berkeley is one of the most famous colleges in the state of California. It has always been a place of student protest and activism. Here's just a little picture of that. Hippies, you've heard of them. We have lots of hippies in the Bay Area. This is Ken Kesey, the Merry Pranksters. one of the most famous chemists of LSD, Owsley, was actually based in my childhood neighborhood. Move forward a little more into the 70s and post 70s. Okay, on the left, we have Steve Jobs in 1998, the year I was born. And on the right, beloved rapper Mac Dre, who was one of the leaders of the 2000s Bay Area hip hop scene. The hyphy movement. Not the only scene, but a popular scene. Ah. So I just wanted to put these together because I find it interesting that the tech revolution and the national hip hop movement developed simultaneously starting around the 70s over the past 50 years. And both of these cultural influencers have important ties to the Bay Area. And I also just wanted to juxtapose these two people, these two movements, to describe the modern day Bay Area cultural spectrum and the tension between the gentrification of the Bay Area and the history of art and counterculture. Okay, here is a photo of a techie person I found from an NPR article titled "Despite Ridicule, the Patagonia Vest Endures in San Francisco Tech." And while us locals do love to hate on techies, I have to say I also know and love many people who work in tech. They are good people with actual senses of style. And that the brutal gentrification and massive wealth gap of the Bay Area in the 21st century is a really heartbreaking issue that, of course, stems from late stage capitalism, not vests. And it makes it really hard for local artists to stay there and people, working class people, to stay in their home. This is a photo of me and some of my friends last summer in Oakland. I am kind of like in the middle top, like next to like the no, no, you guys see me? Yeah, that's me. That's me. Yeah, this is just a group of some of my friends. I have a really amazing friend group in the Bay Area. It's really big. Almost everyone seen in this picture is an artist, actually. Or they are, and most of them are local people who were raised in the Bay Area, or they moved to the Bay Area for art or for education. So just want to like posit that as there's still an art scene, even though I feel like we get this bad rap of it. It's all gone, but I feel very grateful to be from this place, and I feel really committed to staying there as an artistic presence as long as I possibly can. Okay, oh my God, there's a lot of history. Let's take a little break. All right, this is remember Mac Dre? We remember Mac Dre from the slide. We're gonna just show like a quick example of one of the dances that was very popular from his songs. So hopefully this works. Oh no, this might not. Oh, I don't think it's gonna screen share this part. Let's see.
No, no. Getting a bit.
How do I do that? Hold on, please. There
There it is.
Oh, oh, is there sound? Oh, there might not be sound. Yeah. Oh,
No.
nope, there's no sound. All right, I tried. We can move on. We can just enjoy his dance. We can enjoy Snizzle dance and then move on. And Matt, if you really want to know the dance in the song, you can find me later. We can enjoy it. That guy was really good at it.
Oh, look,
It's okay. We'll move on. Thank you. Hmm? This dance. Okay. Moving on. Chapter 2. I like to draw and death is inevitable. Oh, okay. Okay, this is a picture of me when I was like 4 years old. I've always known that I was an artist. My earliest memory ever is of drawing. I am a painter, a sewist, a printmaker, a ceramicist, but really, for me, it all comes back to drawing. This is a picture of me in first grade. It says, "Now I am drawing with my friend Eva." It is even funner. Funner than what? Pretty much everything. I still agree with this statement. I think drawing is the most fun thing. While I was here, I did a little side quest with Lily where we did something called 100 drawings, where you try to make quickly 100 drawings in a set amount of time. The time frame we did was 3 weeks, but we actually did it I did it in 18 days. Lily did it in 15 days and made a quilt out of it. Ask her about that later. This is just an example of one of my 100 drawings. But really, enjoyment is the pillar of my artistic ethos. It's really important to me that the work is fun. I mean, if it's fun and if it's not fun and it doesn't pay, why am I being an artist? And it's hard. It's hard to be an artist, but I also really think that all jobs are hard. I'm a really passionate person, and spending all of my energy on work that I'm not passionate about makes me lose my mind. See chapter 4, times I've crashed and burned. Doing more 100 drawings. A key approach to the way I draw is keeping an open mind to the balance of control and acceptance. Um, Technical and highly realistic drawing is something I know how to do. I do have a traditional fine art background, but I don't really find technical drawing to be particularly interesting or enjoyable. I call that type of drawing tight butthole drawing, where I rather draw like an animal, not like I'm constipated. Um, Oops, sorry. Yeah, there's just another example for 100 drawings. You can see the left hand drawn by the right and the right hand drawn by the left. So that's like an example of the way I like exploring and enjoying drawing and just seeing for myself what happens if I draw in a weird way or in a weird circumstance or draw with a stick in the mud. That's way more interesting to me. I'm really curious about in what can a drawing be or even be about? Can long division be a drawing? I want to know about why, when, and why we choose to draw something, especially in a time when we do have the option to take a picture or make a voice memo on our phones. So, what is drawing about if you have all these other ways of perfectly recording things? This is a drawing from the other day, a conversation I had with Glenn. So more than anything, I also see myself in the lineage of being a cartoonist. I grew up reading comics in the morning paper every single day before school. Literally from preschool until I graduated high school, my mom got the paper and I read the morning comics every day. So clearly this influenced me in how my brain thinks about storytelling. Like many cartoonists, I use narrative and characters, but I would say the narrative is usually my life and the character is me. I see my work as sort of a diary that blends a bit of observation and imagination. It's not exactly a reliable record of events as it is a record of my feelings. So, for example, I love riding my bike. I was thrilled when Nico hooked me up with a bike at Alchemy to bump around on the island. I drew myself here naked on the bike because I felt so free on my bike. I never at any point actually rode the bike with my shirt off, but this is how I feel on the bike. Yeah, I draw for myself because this is really how I process life. I find it pretty maddening to try and make my art with an audience in mind. If it happens to resonate to anyone who looks at it, that's just an amazing bonus. This is really find drawing to be how I exist. Chapter 3, but what about humor and materiality? We're talking about Bay Area history and then about being a cartoonist, which is kind of humor and materiality, but that still feels like we need to go into humor and materiality. Okay, so I did a classic, like, what's the definition? I need to think about this. Humor, the quality of being amusing or comic. especially as expressed in literature or speech. I'm not a comedian, but I do love to be amused. And I don't make exactly, newspaper comic type jokes in my work, but I do like things to be silly and bizarre and amusing to myself. Materiality, the quality or character of being material or composed of matter. You could say stuff is made of stuff. And it's true, my art is made of physical materials, often with the intention to amuse. And now I will finally show you some of my art that's not just 100 drawings. I want to be clear, I've only picked works that I find amusing. And that is why I made them, to amuse myself. Um, so just assume everything I show I think is funny, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the materiality and process behind it. Just remember, I do a lot of other emotions in my work, not just amusing ones, but you can see that at a later date. Okay. So here we have two earthworms having sex while riding a bike. This is a page from one of my sketchbooks. I'm a super avid sketchbook user. Going back to that idea of like drawing as a way of being and existing and constantly processing, like my sketchbook is a big safety blanket that is often with me. This particular image, I remember I was sleeping at my aunt's house and I just sat up in bed in the middle of the night and thought of this vision. It wasn't a dream, it was just, I just jumped up and I thought, two earthworms having sex riding a bike, and I drew it. Another animal mating image. So this one says swimming sex newts. I don't know if you guys have seen how newts have like sex in the water where one like wraps its legs around them and they swim together underwater. It's really cool. It's called amplexus, actually. Um, this is actually a print, a trace mono print, which is a really cool type of printmaking where you can only make a one of one reversal drawing. You roll out your ink and then with a lot of powder that makes it super, super tacky and hard to move. And you float a little piece of paper on top of it. And then on the back of the paper, you press with a sharp object like the tip of a ballpoint or a needle, and you draw your image on the back of the paper, and then you pull off the paper, and the reversal image has come off from that really tacky printing ink below. So if you look in the swimming sex newts caption, the first S is backwards because I had to write that all backwards. And I messed up that first S, but it works. So I had to think about how to write backwards. And then I added some color with watercolor. Okay, so this was another sort of not a sketchbook page, but was just like a playful warm-up drawing. Um, it's how I drew this was I had sewn some curtains for my closet with this kind of traditional printed design that had like blue images of like old time people enjoying themselves, and I just started looking at those curtains and drawing those characters using some watercolor, and then I decided to add some Charlie XCX lyrics. So it says, yeah, it's 2 a.m. and she's out there in a sheer white dress wearing last night's makeup. Yeah, she's in her mid-20s, real intelligent, hedonistic. Yeah, it's 4 a.m. and she's out there. She's kind of fucked up, but she's still in vogue. And then I added some more color. And that was just, a fun little exercise that people ended up really liking. So a lot of the time I do things that I think are way too ridiculous and then end up being more well received than I anticipate. Here's something from earlier this year. Okay, so my cat eats only this medicated wet food, and she likes only specific flavors. And they come in these little cardboard boxes that have the little cans of wet food, and there's double or triple stacked. And in between those cans are these little paper dividers that I just love to draw on. They're the perfect size. They're this nice brown cardstock. And they just take ink and gouache really well. And there's only one pet store in the city next to Berkeley that sells it. So it's this whole mission that me and my cat are really committed to is this certain brand of wet food and this certain flavor that has these certain dividers, and it has to be the right size because if you get the wrong size pack, they don't put these dividers in it. And I've been doing a whole series of these cat food comics. But just another example of materiality from a unsuspecting location. So this was not actually the finished image, but it's close to finished. This is a pet portrait that I made for my dear friends of their beloved dog, Ebby. This is actually an oil painting. And aside from just it being funny that Ebby is having some sake and a little smoke, I also think it's funny that this pet portrait I use such a high art material for, and that, as you can see, usually I'm using some kind of random things or random surfaces like a cat food container, but with this pet portrait, it's an oil painting. So that's funny to me. Okay. This is a bronze badge from 1400 CE, Europe. It is a vulva pilgrim. I didn't make this. This is from 1400 CE, about 600 something years ago. This was believed to be carried by pilgrims in Europe to ward off the plague. I love it. They even specify that its hat is a pilgrim hat, and it's got little dorky sandals on, and it has a penis on the end of its staff. And I just love this idea. I had to have one for myself, so I made one to ward off the plague. And I'm actually, the next slide is going to be my last piece of art I'm sharing with you, and it is also going to be the one thing that I've made since being here, which is this. Oh, admit. I see. Sorry. So this is a ceramic postcard that was one of the first things I started making when I showed up to my residency. So that's the front and back. So on the front, you see the pilgrim vulva. And on the back, I decided to write a letter to one of my dearest friends in this world, Victoria, who lives in Montreal. And I put some song lyrics to a song we were really obsessed with at one point when I visited her in the past, which is, "Here I am, okay with it. Here I am. The whole world is my daddy." And the address, Montreal, Quebec, Canada, the world. So this is like, just in terms of materiality, this is a lot of like weird translation of this bronze badge painted then on ceramic onto a postcard. But why would you make a postcard of ceramic that's going to break? It did break. Look at the corner where it broke off. So all those layers of translation and history and sending it to my friend who I'm so close to, it's just, and I might have to put it in a really big safe box that then she'll have to unwrap this big box to find this small postcard in it to ship it to Canada. I find that very amusing. All right. In conclusion, I like to draw. I'm not a stranger to darkness, but drawing is the most fun thing I can easily do every day. So thank you to drawing. Thank you for listening. I hope that from this presentation you draw anything and have fun doing it. Oh my god, yeah! Wow, I need like a breath.
Can we tell the Zoom now?
Oh yeah.
Hello, Zoom people. We're going to do a Q&A, and you might hopefully be able to hear us. And if not, I'm sorry. And if you want to be in the Q&A too, maybe do that like hand raisey thing on Zoom and we'll unmute you and you can ask it, or you could do it in the chat and we'll figure that out. But Rose is going to talk, and I might, should I turn the screen around to show you?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that. You guys, you might be able to hear, you might not. Sorry. All right. There's Ella Rose all the way up there. Okay. Maybe I'll do stop share. Stop share. Yeah, okay. She's up there.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if through your experience of going to school for art, if at any point you lost that feeling of enjoyment and playfulness around your art.
Well, yes, but it's because I found myself in a graphic design degree, which, if that is something with joy, you could be feeling that way. But I was doing things that had no pictures, which was a big problem for me. And I actually had like a total crisis around that because I had so much graphic design homework that I had very little time to make any art outside of my sketchbook. That was the time where I think my sketchbook practice really became what it is today and got really, really rich and really became that like protection from like an anvil falling on my head. But I like wasn't really sure if I was an artist with all I did sketchbook and then go with dental tablets. So that what did happen. Yeah. And then I also didn't finish art school, for those of you who don't know. I was very, very bummed out and had to leave.
I just wanted to say thank you for putting that time into the history of the Bay Area and how it applies to you and your art, because even though I'm familiar with the Bay Area, just seeing all those layers, the richness of the place and how it's part of you, it really helped. So thanks for taking that time.
My pleasure. See?
Yeah, how do you think your interest in music kind of intertwines your love for drawing? Because you do a lot of like lyrics and kind of like apply to your text, but where do you see them combined?
Well, I think that I love music and I'm really glad that I don't make music. It's like really nice that there's this like endless amazing world of art that I can just enjoy and not have to like think about my ego within it and just get into wherever I want and leave, come and go as I please, not think about how that affects my existence. But I think that putting lyrics in it definitely is a recurring thing, making art about music. I think that I think it does tie back again to like this kind of like processing. Something I didn't mention is I'm also dyslexic, which is like a brain type in a way. I think of it where it's like it comes up as an issue if you're trying to spell things, but that's just where it's an issue and that's where it's noted. But I really see it more as like having a brain that like moves things around in a really different way, like abstractly. And so I think a lot of my work is kind of like crossing the senses of like reading, writing, seeing, visualizing, hand-eye direction. And that's why I think music often, I'm like, I hear music, but I want to put it into this other processing sensory place.
Yeah. What can you talk about mentors or influences?
I feel like that's a whole nother presentation.
Shots and pops.
Yeah. There's a lot. I'm really lucky. I'm from a family of both teachers and artists, so I didn't have to rebel against that, which was really nice. A lot of teachers and artists in my family, so it was always encouraged. I always was, grew up in a city. I was always to museums, like I did not figure that out for myself. But I do still think that comics and illustrators, book illustrations are a big influence for me. Especially actually relating again back to dyslexia. It was extremely hard for me to learn to read growing up. And having pictures in books was a kind of like the major motivator for me to be like, okay, I do want to learn to read because I want to know more what these pictures are. So I still put a lot of things on illustrators.
it's like a musician, I can like form the people and share and like, make albums and share. Like it seems like a lot of this is like sketchbook and things that I'm using, but how do you like present it to people that have very like zines or like gallery shows?
I'm working towards that. I mean, sharing visual art. I think it's how to share visual art is a struggle for like I think for all visual artists. Like because there is times where something I really do make for myself and I never show it to another person, and that's one thing. And then there's work where it's like doesn't feel complete until it gets to experience it. At this point, I am from time to time in group shows. I do sell my work. But really my favorite is when I get to sit down with somebody and just they're in my living room and get to show them what I've been working on. I do really like an intimate share of my art. And I'm also trying to work more on my online business, but that is not easy or fun for me to do, so I really have to make myself do it.
Yeah, for a lot of your art that where you're mixing in dialogue and these either music lyrics or funny quotes or just waking up and thinking two words having sex. When you sketch, do you often come up with a line or is there dialogue that's in your head first, or do you ever just as you're drawing it kind of goes somewhere and then you write the words out?
It usually happens pretty much simultaneously with the drawing. I don't think that hard about the words. I don't like pre-plan them that much. I think I think almost all of the words are a little bit like an element of poetry, and I just as much as I don't like to draw in a really self-conscious way. I don't know if that's the right word. I don't like it. They're just kind of like not every drawing I do uses words. I think there's a lot of words, especially in these humorous ones, because of that like kind of relating to comic and the comics like structure. Yeah, it's pretty underthought, to be honest.
Okay, wait, I have one question. Just one. There seems like there's I love the California history tour. How do you feel like that influences your art? You know?
I think that I would want to think about like for a minute before I don't like doesn't jump to my answer. I think that more the influence is that, as I kind of said, to reiterate that last slide, is like this commitment to remaining as an artistic presence in this place.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would go somewhere else for a cool side quest to make art, but unless I can't be in the Bay Area, like I don't want it to lose. I don't want there to not be artists. And I feel like already people don't think there's artists there. Or that's too hard. And it is hard, but like it's worth it. Yeah. Thanks everybody.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right, you guys. Isai is up next. We're gonna do some shuffling around and yeah, possibly.
But I feel like yours is more straightforward.
I like the behavior structure. I like the structure.
Do you feel ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters.
Okay.
Are we done sharing?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I know that.
We'll stop the share and then those are the people in there and yours is right here. Okay. Yes. Okay. And then
Should I move over?
I can do that'll just be we'll just screen share. On read your little bio. Yeah. Okay, so that was El Rose. This is Isai. And all right. So Isai Soto is an artist and designer based in San Diego, California. His work explores disguise through Mexican iconography. He mainly utilizes print media such as zines, posters, and serigraphs. He holds a BA in anthropology from Columbia University, which informs the ethnographic perspective in his practice. So, without further ado, this is Isai. And then, do you want to just share the screen and you say what's up?
Yeah, I'll say what's up.
Yeah.
Hey, what's up?
Hey, what's up?
All right, let me just share this part. Share screen. All right. Oh, yeah. We're gonna close your eyes for a second. Perhaps flip through this. Okay, great. Hello everybody. Oh, Natalie Soto, my sister. Oh, good. Hi, Natalie Soto. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just about to begin. I sent it to her and she was like, I don't know, maybe I'll watch it. Great. Thank you, Natalie. Awesome. Hello, everyone. My name is Isai. Pronounce that Isai. I want to say thank you so much to Alchemy Art Center. Thank you to San Juan Islands Museum of Art. And thank you so much, Rose Avery, for your amazing presentation. It's a hard one to follow up since you've been so funny during our humor and materiality talk. Today, my presentation is entitled, I Am Not Going to Save You. And so let's begin. Oh, my screen sharing is possible. Unpause it. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, there we are. Awesome. You're a whiz. Awesome. Hi. So I am from San Diego, California. That's a little untrue. Another characteristic about me is that I love to lie. I am from an hour north of San Diego. I'm from Fallbrook, California. We have a population about 30,000. I graduated in a school about 500 people. I was not valedictorian. I was not even salutatorian. I was not even in the top 10 at all. I like to describe myself as a very a straight B student. I'm very interested in class, but I'd rather, take a nap and go live life and learn from the real world. My work investigates, as Katie says, new interpretations of Mexicanness and Latina iconography. I try to negotiate tensions between national identity, mainly Mexico America, and then I do that through performance and design. I often work through the themes of religion, the self, pageantry, and punk ideology, and I like to employ that through costume, through performance, and through printmaking, including zines. I did not come from an arts background. I kind of fell into this in my 20s. In high school, I was actually very involved in the Future Farmers of America as part of our local Fallbrook FFA chapter. If you know about 4-H, we are not far from that. I raised swine, I raised goats, I raised pig, or I already said that, or I raised steers. I had plants, I worked at multiple plant nurseries. I just loved it so much. And I didn't know what was going to be my future after that. And I kind of had to look back to myself and say, what do I like about this? And I realized I liked hanging around other people. I liked being around people who were also doing this thing with me. And that made me think, great. Like I like leadership things and I like people. So obviously, like since I want to help people, I should be a politician. Like I should go into politics, they write policy and they help people. And this is how you know I'm from the middle of nowhere because I've never met a politician before. And so I applied to Georgetown University to get a degree in political science. I spent my freshman year there. And then in my first couple classes, I soon found out how wrong I was. I looked around the room and said, all you people are evil, evil, evil people. It would feel like an uphill battle where I would say, like, I don't think we should bomb other places, actually. Like, just full stop. We shouldn't do that. And it seemed like I was one of the few that felt that way. And so that kind of got me to reposition where I was. And so the lucky part about being at Georgetown is I took a graphic design course, which I did not hate as much as Ella Rose hated her program. And soon after, we were hit with one of the nastiest pandemics that the US has seen, and I was locked away at home with a graphic design program and a subscription to Adobe. After that, I transferred to Columbia University to study anthropology. And I kind of stayed there. And by chance, I took a printmaking class in the summer of 2021. I was a young 20-year-old looking to materialize the kind of digital works I had been working on. And it kind of hit me like a bug. I had gotten the community I wanted to. I had all my interests combined into this one thing, and it made me feel like I never wanted to leave a printmaking studio. And at about 22, 23, or 21, 22, actually, I decided that, like, actually, I love this. And it seems like a lot of contemporary art is just really about talking and having discussions or negotiating and conversations about this and really ideating. And so I was like, you know what? I can't draw, but now I can be an artist these days. And so I committed to that. And so it was a little late to the game, but then I kind of had to internalize what the role of the artist was. And that's my next slide. So the role of the artist. I feel like as artists, we have to think about like who we are in the large society, in the body of a productive society. I was a graphic design intern at the Whitney Museum of American Art, where they have this big slogan that says there are artists among us. And I always really hated this slogan. I hated the merch. I hated the little baby tees that they had it. I thought it was nasty and gross because I feel like there is this idolization of the artist and artist as a role model, and I really push back against that idea. I feel like artists, if you have an artist in your life, I think they probably owe you money. They're not here to like help you out. Artists are, I feel like, in very inherently selfish people because they think about their own practice a lot of the time. I feel like even the social practice artists kind of like are a little wooey about their own ideas and are kind of carried by their own pride in some other ways. And so it kind of makes me reject this idea of a role model artist or a practice of an artist producing something because the real idea that's happening with the role model is that the artist is producing something for us. There is something that the artist is giving us. And in my eyes, artists are kind of non-functioning members of society. They are not producing something crazy. I think to bring it back to our pandemic eyes, it's like we saw who was the essential worker, and we found out that the artist was not amongst them. That is okay. That's fine. It's okay. I think it's for me, it's like I feel like we're also poisoned in some way that like everyone has to be producing something, everyone has to be contributing to something. But in a lot of ways, the artist is not in some ways, and a lot of artists, to be honest, are not, and that's fine. There is this Fanon quote from Wretched of the Earth where he talks about in a political movement in social upheaval, even the artists have to be kind of connected to the politics. And I am telling you, as a person who lived my life for 20 years as a quote normal person, I can't think of a body of artwork that really changed my life. I can think about social programs that really did. In kindergarten, I was in Head Start, which is a LBJ program, Lyndon B. Johnson for low-income areas. I was out in Lake Elsinore, California, and I was never really thinking about art in my daily life. I didn't even think that it could be a thing we could do. Um, but how has art transformed my life? And honestly, I think art has kind of let me know that I can be kind of nasty. I am a liar, and it is part of my practice. I am a narcissist in some ways, and I'm lazy in the other ways. Because why am I an artist? Because I don't want to go to law school. I don't want to have a 9 to 5. I don't want to produce anything. Yet, artists do produce stuff. They do produce items, they produce materials, they produce these luxury things that we can buy into. And that is a very good thing in society. I think it's the most human part of us is to actually enjoy leisure. Back to theory, if anyone cares. Uh, I think a lot about kind of the root of humanity is being to enjoy this leisure. If we were robots, we would kind of measure ourselves into how much we can produce and at what rate and at how productive we are is not a measure of humanity at all. And so I think about Kropotkin's writing in The Conquest of Bread about leisure being a human right. We all have the right to leisure around, or we have the right to a little bit of luxury in our lives. And I feel like those artists who kind of commit themselves to this leisurely life or to showing that there are alternative modalities of living. I think Alchemy Art Center is an amazing example of people living in community with each other. And I feel like the artist's role is really about showing this commitment to things that are not productive in that way. And we continue. So as an artist, I feel like a lot of my practice is about being very casually human. I don't have all the answers to everything. I don't have every answer. Oh, back Natalie Soto, back into here. I don't have the answers to everything. I can't say I have wisdom with certain knowledge. And I feel like a lot of the times I contradict myself. I say my personal philosophy is one thing and then I act another way. And I think that's all very human in my artist practice is really about that. I try to let my curiosity wander in my work and not try to follow a single vein. And in this kind of self-portrait I just got into a little a studio or photo booth and took these photos of myself. This was after a performance, which I will get to, with the alter ego that I perform under named Mama. And I think that basically that I make art because my life feels a little moot without it. And that is enough reason for me. And a lot of that does come from a very selfish place where it's like I am not here to find the next cure for whatever. I'm here to draw a pretty picture. And that is okay too. So being casually human, there's a couple ways that I do this. And I try not to feed into this grandiosity of being an artist, of where if you make something great, you are suddenly become a genius in some way. I kind of reject genius in a lot of ways. And I think when we do that, we kind of recognize that a lot of humans have souls and that we can nurture those souls in a lot of different ways, and a lot can happen for you as a human. So one of the ways that I kind of explore being a casual human is zines. I love zines. They're a very democratic way to kind of share information. And so last year I did this zine while I was living in New York City. I was living in New York City for about the last 5 years. And as you know, I went to Columbia and then I stayed after because that's where artists are supposed to live, quote. But I really didn't gravitate too much to it. But I love New York City as an urban metropolis. And in this zine, I kind of explore those ideas and in and out. And I made about 100+ copies of this with my office printer. They don't know I did that. And that is where I mean that like artists are liars and cheaters and grifters. They don't know I was using all that money and so to print these out. And I was distributing them for free. It was just like it was about the love of the game. The love of the game comes up a lot in my practice. I love the game. I do it for the pardon my cursing, I'm gonna start cursing a lot, but the shits and gigs, like I do it for the plot line and the story. And so I'm gonna read 2 excerpts from this zine. The zine, Aren't We All in Love with Each Other in New York City, was published last year, and the center spread has this story. Wednesday night, New York's hottest club is James Fuentes Gallery on Delancey. A line crowded the door to get in, while a different group crowded the walls to smoke. Is this the line? No. Is this the line? No. Do you have a light? No. So many people outside, even the ice that slicked the ground began to melt from the collective body heat. I nearly slipped a couple times. Didn't though. Inside, everyone you thought you forgot was there. Not a single new person met. From another report, the air was saturated with desperation. As if the crowd were not enough of a fire hazard, the blanket of hot breath and carbon dioxide inside made the space absolutely flammable. We left for a gay bar after to play pool. I lost the first game in a 2v1 between an old flame and I and my roommate. I won the second round between them two, by default, a reasonably less flammable interaction. We were intercepted by someone at the bar. He drunk rambled, and as one is supposed to, I courteously asked questions and made conversation. He remarked on his time spent in Brazil and the incredibly diverse population there. It became a lesson in his Cuban ancestry, and I told him, I'm Mexican. He's Mexican too, I pointed at the past flame. He didn't care much about that. When he finished, he looked at us and my white roommate and let us know how fortunate we were to have one another. Later, we joined a Mod Podge collection of gays at another bar. We were meeting up with A and B, who were joined by C. D, my white roommate, dated C in the past, and A too, sort of. A and B met in college, and I met D at a different school. E was there too. They dated A too, apparently, but became a part of the AB friend group because that's A's MO. I knew A from D, but forged my own friendship with him when we visited Atlanta at the same time. I see B on the train all the time. B and C are babbling about the movies I've never heard of, and F, well, F was just there too. I'm not sure where F came from. By the end of the night, I follow E on Instagram, and I hop into F's Uber since they live close by. End of exit. The next is a poem I wrote in here too. I love chain anything. God, when they put that shit around the gates of the park, I just want to gnaw on it so bad. Lose all my teeth and feel the metal in my fucking gums. Set free the fucking park. Liberation via K9. Man, I want a non-industrial chain so much, putting my tongue into every crevice and hearing it jingle and pull with tension. I want to yank and yank on chain link and just get my big fucked up molar in there. Really give it a fair shot. God knew not to make me into a fucking horse. I chewed through that metal bit. Man, where is the nearest chain? I'll bite through the padlock too. The sound it makes as it drags on the concrete floor, the power it possesses. I want to bite a fucking chain. I want to bite it so bad. I want all my teeth to crack while I'm at the park and lose it. I'm going to lose it. And then I end the zine there. I like stream of conscious kind of writing. It's a good way to kind of get all of your subconscious out, and in other ways, it kind of lowers the kind of standard for what art can be. In other ways, there's kind of this lowbrow humor that I employ in zines, but when you're given a free zine, you are also given an option. You are given an option to archive it and really hold on to it, and maybe make it a part of your shared memories with that person. Or because it's printer paper, you can throw it away. It really, in the end, it doesn't matter and becomes part of the decision of being handed this piece of art, if you consider it that. Drag, okay. The other way that I'm casually human is I do really bad drag. I'm a terrible, I wouldn't even say drag queen. I don't even dare to say drag thing. Like it's just bad. It is a very nasty plastic wig that I put on, and I pretend I'm the hottest shit on the world. This is me performing at the Stud in San Francisco for a fundraiser for the ASPCA that my friend put on. They were very nice to me and said that I could perform. I brought nothing except the mask, and so I'm borrowing their makeup, these wings, this outfit that doesn't fit me, these stockings that are too light for me, and this sword that I also got in a lost and found at another gay bar. Bad drag is so important because I think part of it is about being part of a tradition for performing for your friends. You know, it's like I think we relegated performance and theater to kind of these institutions, and you know, a lot of history is about just being around a campfire and doing something crazy and telling a story. I like to perform to punk music. I like to perform to hard to listen to songs. Am I a good dancer? Not really. Do I put my best effort into it? Not really either. I think it really what matters is that you give people a sense of presence in front of you. And in this number that you're seeing the outfit for, it was a holiday number. I did "Oi to the World" by No Doubt, which is a ska remix of "Joy to the World" about punks in the middle of nowhere. And I started it with the opening song of Metropolis, a very old German movie that kind of changed cinema forever because of its combination of orchestral music and moving picture. It is these juxtapositions that I'm really interested in. It is this kind of like place where really kind of lowbrow art can live and kind of still make an impact in some way. And so that's drag. It's super fun, and I'm not good at it. Oh, here's another picture. Oh, this is a good one, actually. This is me performing at a house party. This is my usual Germama drag outfit, which is a tie, my white button up, and a black dress. I don't wear a corset, and I often don't tuck, which means, you know, pull back my member in order to give an illusion that I am a woman in some way. I am not. I am not a woman at all. I'm a nasty, nasty human under this wig. Um, God, I actually think there's a really rich tradition to cross-dressing, and I resent this as some sort of gender expression through me. This is me putting a wig on. There is a man under there, Maury. It's nasty. I like to describe myself as an uncle in a wig. Um, so that you know that I'm very humble as well. This is at my friend's birthday party. This was a talent show, and I went on to very quiet music, but I gave it my all. You can see I have a pit stain right here because I don't wash my clothes very often. And you can see my kind of white tank top underneath as well because I pay attention to the details. Um, and this wig is from Party City. Rest in peace. Now to my fine artworks. Um, the only notes I have on my fine artworks are "Speak on it, sister," and so I'm going to speak on it. This is a self-portrait I did about last year. It was for an exhibition at a bar, and that was centering itself around Mexicanness. These small tin ornaments you are seeing are called milagritos. They are kind of votives for prayer, and they are used either to ask for miracles or to be thankful for one. In this series, I'm actually exploring labor. The series is called Employee of the Month. I have a couple of portraits of these where people are in a tie and looking kind of bored, and they are then imposed with this mask that is drawn onto it. I do this because I feel like labor in a lot of ways degenders a lot of people, and this idea of being the employee of the month has nothing to do with you as a person or your personality, but how well you have succeeded at your job. And so I got really interested in portraits in that fashion, and then kind of remixing that kind of pride in being the employee of the month by kind of creating this altar that is adorned by all this sweet metal. Um, in my work, I used to do a lot of self-portraits because I was often the only model I had because I was never a fine artist. I never knew how to ask somebody if they wanted to model for me, but I knew I could make myself into the picture that I wanted. And I was exploring these masks because I feel as though mask, and you'll see it in my previous work as well, but I feel like the luchador mask is actually a very poignant kind of icon of Mexico and of the kind of current era we are in. I'll expand on that. Thank you for asking. Expanding on that is that I think drag as a concept is kind of the epoch that we are in currently, is that because of the advent of social media, everyone has a online self and a real life self, or they are in some way trying to grapple with the differences between those. And so masking as a theory and as a concept is very particular because the luchador masks from the wrestling tradition of Mexico is actually very iconic. Like the masks are personal to the wrestler, and the masks have a distinct style that if you rip off of them, it is seen as grifting or as cheating somebody. And you are not supposed to see these wrestlers underneath these masks at all, but recognize them only through this kind of built identity that they have for them. I feel like a lot of people have done that in their personal lives as well. And I don't have any points on it mostly, but mostly as an autoethnographer from my training as an anthropologist. Do not forget that. From my training as an anthropologist, I am participating as an observer as well and just documenting it. Documentary is also a kind of form that I find a lot of interest in and find particularly kind of necessary in this age of fake news. Oh, this is another mask I made. Recently, I was out of a print studio, which is my main medium, printmaking. And so it kind of relegated me to kind of embark on a different medium, which became, quote, textiles. And so in this photo, I am wearing a mask that I made for myself. The piece is called Americano, and this is taken in Lower Manhattan. I made this mask out of scraps. There are red stripes going down the side of it and blue and white stars that go around it, and I have the devil horns on top of it. This was kind of a commentary on my Americanness as a mask for my Mexican underside, and in some ways of being a mongrel of the two kind of cultures. Masks are really fascinating to me, and I really enjoy them. I enjoy costume in general. And I feel like this pageantry that we've kind of lost is something that I try to re-invoke in my work. Spoke on it, sister. The other kind of works I do often have to do with material things and kind of low culture. And so this is a larger kind of milagro. It's called, instead of a milagrito, the small tin charms. This is a larger talisman slash ornament that's hung around the home. I kind of explore religion a lot and Catholicism a lot because I was not raised Catholic, but most of my Mexican identity was informed by being around Catholics that were my family. We were kind of the outsider, kind of Protestants of the family, but I really felt like I was at home when I saw these kind of Catholic imagery in other people's homes, and I knew that we shared something despite not sharing a religious belief, whatever that might mean. And so I explore this through these tin milagros that are made out of aluminum cans from something I've drank in that day and kind of made this memorabilia of them. And I use paint markers in this, I use collage and newspaper, and I kind of create my own little archive of everything that's happening in my life all at once in this tiny little thing. So now under residency, this is my first artist in residence. Thank you so much, Alchemy Art Center, for taking a chance on me. I hope they don't regret it. We still have a week left, so they can. Under residency, I have been reverting to my roots as a graphic designer. For a long time, I kind of rejected it because I wanted to be a fine artist. There is something so beautiful about being a painter and an illustrator that I've yearned for so long. So long being the 4 short years I've been an artist. But I think there's something so romantic about a painter, and I always have this imagery in me of a painter in their studio, and they walk back from the work and they go, "The blue isn't right," and they cry and they fall to their knees. And I've always wanted that. I've always wanted that, but instead I've been gifted with the beautiful gift of graphic design, uh, and that has manifested as posters. I do a lot of posters. I am booked a lot for posters in my life. It is kind of my biggest side hustle. I do a lot for clubs mostly and nightlife, and I enjoy that a lot because I feel like the poster is also a lost art in some way. The real tragedy of the poster is that they try to communicate with you even though you're not looking, and I feel like that is a mode that I'm very interested in exploring. Because I am not a painter, I tried to investigate how I could get posters closer to painting. And so this moved me into working with textiles. This is drop cloth canvas that I just got from Home Depot. There was this kind of like egalitarian spirit of printmaking that I wanted to stay within. And it's kind of working class kind of also, I'll just say spirit or kind of history that I wanted to remain in that kind of turned me onto this drop cloth. And so I made these larger posters on this drop cloth. And next slide. I had made these larger posters on drop cloth. And then after thinking so much about what the painting was on a wall and what would it be if it was a poster, I completely turned around and said, take them off the wall. I don't want to see them on the wall at all. And decided to suspend them in some way. If you guys are around soon, on Friday, I will be installing these by setting them up in different planes and having them cut through each other so that they start to kind of cover each other up to kind of reveal their importance or kind of reveal how just unnecessary they are. So I did the red, white, and blue thing because, that's a classic. And no one has to question why that happened. So this one is a small poster. I started off as my first one that I did while I was here under residency. It says, "Today, who would deliver the head of John the Baptist? Would he be in plain clothes or wear his uniform proudly? The image is a reworking of the ICE badge to say San Juan el Bautista, who John the Baptist in his lore and history, because he was an expat kind of preacher, his head was asked for by a king and was delivered to him on a platter. There are 4 supposedly that exist as reliquaries in different kind of Catholic churches. And so that is what this image is over here. The central image has become John the Baptist's head. This is also a reaction to some news I've heard of ICE doing raids on San Juan Island. I am vehemently against ICE and believe they are terrorists of this nation and that they should not exist. And so because of that, I kind of wanted to make a strong kind of condemnation against what is going on an island with a Spanish name. The poster behind it was made much later. It's khalas, which is a colloquial term to say stop that or enough in Arabic. In front of it, we have this horse, kind of a symbol of like freedom and mobility, kind of trapped in this square. But it is a very poignant kind of image that I enjoy. This one you can't see the details so much of, but it is 2 sardines. And this is actually a woven poster. And so these are not squares that have been patched on, but there is a weave going through them. And this one I like because it kind of is both a poster, but it kind of reminds you of a picnic table. And also the sardines are placed so that they're like a kind of in a tin can. It is this kind of like, space of recognition that I want to work in. And, I would bother to say that humanness that I'm trying to work in, kind of recognition that this is something that is not far away from you in some way. This next one is a missing poster for a dog. This was a Facebook post on SJI Pets that I have turned into this gigantic poster. Walter is a real dog that was missing at the beginning of August on San Juan Island. The owner wrote about him that he's a very sweet boy, but also very afraid of new people, so he won't just come to you. The owner described that he jumped a fence in the backyard on Turnpoint Road around 6 p.m. And this was posted on August 7th at 9:33 p.m., which you might think is when he has realized that this dog has come missing. These are the photos that he posted on Facebook, and the person's name is Greg Lewis. I was very interested in turning this into a poster because it kind of breaks this kind of reality we think is happening on social media, that things are impermanent in some ways and that there is no record of them. And by turning it into a record, I both kind of, I poke a little bit of fun. We can say it. I poke a little bit of fun at a missing dog poster, and by blowing it up, making it huge and cutesy. Of course I do. But it's also this is also a test for you guys in some way. My dream is that somebody knows Greg Lewis. My dream is somebody knows Greg Lewis and this picture reaches him in some way. And what is he to do with that information now? I made a poster of his dog that was missing. And what can he do about it? He posted it on a public forum, so it's really his fault. In better news, they found the dog. So in the comments, he said he found the dog, so it'll be okay. This is Morse code. So this is also a poster because it uses text in some way. But what I like about Morse code is that it's kind of an open secret. If you so choose, you can find out what this says, but that's really up to you. I think there is also an intergenerational aspect of this. I kind of use the boldness of today's times with the kind of language that is more associated with World War II and kind of the wars in general. I know people of another generation who were actually taught in schools to learn Morse code, and it was part of their curriculum. And so for them, it is kind of a welcome image of this thing that they had to learn that never resurfaced again for them. And it kind of is a reminder to kind of younger people that there are secret languages that you don't know. And if you have all this information on your phone and this really matters to you, you should look it up. And so this is kind of a way to remix posters and to remix language by keeping a secret to myself, but also saying it plainly. This is a lawn chair. This is kind of just the same kind of idea of recognizable images that kind of meet people where they're at. And then this one, this poster says, "When will my Latinidad speak to the masses?" is kind of my latest one that is kind of encapsulates the series in some way. I think as artists today, we have to sell something of ourselves because of that productive member of society ism that we have. And so we as artists, and a lot of the time, people as workers are asked to get all the character traits of themselves and turn it into something marketable and to get all these things that make you distinct and to turn it into something that is profitable in some ways as well. And so for me, I, as a Latino person, have had to come to terms with this self and this lived identity that has been fed to me in some ways and said, this is kind of my character trait that I have to work off of. And so if I have this kind of broader message that I have to the world that I want to broadcast, when will this very distinct thing about me kind of relate to them? Or can I expect it to? Latinidad is kind of a loaded term in some ways too, because the broader Latino community is one that's brought together from a history of colonization. And because of that, also excludes some people. I think there are a lot of Francophone people in the Caribbean that are not considered under this umbrella of Latinidad. So what does it really mean? Does Latinidad mean that you come from a country that was colonized by a Romance language, mainly being Spanish and Portuguese? Or can it mean that you share this kind of climate, this geographic region, or this kind of history of being part of the quote global South, or quote part of this third world, or part of this other? And so Latinidad is this kind of like great term that I love using. And so in this poster, I'm just kind of thinking of like, when will this thing that has been ascribed to myself and is part of my lived identity apply to everybody else as a poster? And so those are the posters I've been working on while I've been here under residency. I also like this really cool pucker shape a lot. That is mostly because I like it. There's nothing much to say about it there, but that it makes them unique and that makes me smile. Awesome. I think that is about it on me. Oh, got it. I love you as a human. I love humanity. I love all of our nastiness. I love everything gross about this. I think the thing you have to love about humans is kind of like loving boogers, is that like you have to love the nasty underbelly of humanity to really enjoy yourself. That being said, I am nobody's savior. I am nobody's role model. I have I have things that I need to fix about myself and that I'm focused on because I'm a selfish person, that I'm not too interested in what the world is also suffering in that capacity. And because of that, I'm still making art, and I think that's beautiful, but it ultimately is a self-interest practice. And artists are not here to save you, but they are here to remind us that there are alternative ways to live and that we can learn from them in that way. Upcoming. So if you want to see me walk the walk, I am doing a DIY drag show at the Alchemy Dome on Thursday. I am wearing the nastiest wig you've ever seen. It is so matted. It had leaves in it, it had dirt in it. I put it in some water today. It's on a clothesline today. I made a dress from a thrift store into a mask, and I'm gonna dance around and jiggle to some nasty music. I invited a couple friends on the island to also be a part of this experimental night of drag. And if you want to see how I thrash around and lose it, per se, please join us at Alchemy Arts Center at the Dome on Thursday, September 11th at 6:30, a night you'll never forget. And then the day after that, we have our group show where I will be presenting this installation of posters, and I will be presenting them in this fashion all together. And I think that should be very exciting because I feel like everything in contemporary art now is installation, and if you're not thinking about installation, you're not making contemporary art. And so I will make my commentary on, I will make my negotiation and my truce with installation on Friday. So please join us there. Please also be there to support Rose Avery, who just spoke to you for the last 45 minutes, and also to support Lily Nash, the other artists in residence here too. We are all artists that are seeking to kind of remix these kind of very traditional materials and kind of present them in new lights. So please join us there. Thank you very much for listening. That concludes my presentation. I will not save you. Natalie Soto, thank you so much for being here.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure. Should I turn around?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, stop. How do I stop sharing? Do you know? Okay, cool.
Yeah. But then it's like sort of like that's fine.
All right, cool. Here's the He's not printed like how I usually do, so it's got a lot of blank pages. There's no need to explain myself. Should have been there. Yeah. Thank you so much for sitting through that. I appreciate it.
Did you get some feedback from people who passed out?
Oh, that's a good question. Yes. Okay, so there is a part about in this theme where I talk about urbanism, and I say that there's a faux urbanism everywhere else in these kind of like cities where we pretend that they're cities, like I'll learn about this, but we pretend it's a city, but the real urbanist parts of cities are not present. They're filled with stroads and gigantic kind of carways and parking lots. And somebody really rejected that. They said like that's still urbanism in some way, and I just said no, it's not. It's not. And I am a person who likes to argue and is really I'm very headstrong, and I feel like I don't like to back down in a lot of ways. And so I did get some people who wanted to commentary, but it's in some ways it's like this is such an ephemeral thing. It doesn't matter so much. And that's kind of like the decision of like integrity as a writer of zines is kind of like this. There is this kind of juxtaposition that like you are a writer, you should be representing the truth in some ways. You are writing at such a low level, doesn't matter. So that's a fun way to I think to write. You know, it's that it doesn't matter or that this matters so much. I'm gonna make it for cheap.
Okay, so I see the anthropology influence. Is there any political science for the first year of school, the Georgetown University influence?
What is the political science part of it? I feel that political science part of it is mainly relevant in the kind of lived experience of myself. Although I'm gonna button up now, is that it's very buttoned up and kind of not loose, and it's that way I try to embrace a looser style in my life. Also, I really reject conservatism in a lot of ways. I think it's important to talk about things that you think are politically important and are pertinent, but I think a lot of my subconscious does that work. And you know, you can say I'm some Freudist that like believes that my subconscious is the only thing I need to rely on, and you know the rest will do the talking. But I do think there is some power to making this art about these related topics that are either underspoken about or are not being represented well. Yes.
I was so floored when I first learned how short your artistic career and how recently it has started.
Yeah.
That blew me away when I met you. And I know you have another residency coming up after this one.
Thank you.
And I'm just wondering, like, if you have any like future goals, plans, PowerPoints.
Right.
What's next?
What's next?
What's your dream? And even if it's anyway, what are you dreaming of? What do you want?
What do I want?
Yeah.
What do I want out of this life? What do I want in the next 2 years to do that? So I became an artist when I was living in New York, and I feel like New York history and American history has centered itself around New York in a lot of ways. this mainly happened in the 20th century when, we have these crazy Americans who are living in New York and kind of are living after World War II. So we have these postmodernists. And so I hate Pollock so much. I think he sucks. But we're talking about Pollock, we're talking about Robert Rauschenberg, Jasper John, Mark Rothko, who is American, pretty sure, right? Do you know this? Yeah, but he's living in New York also at the time. And so we have these crazy kind of like, Ellsworth Kelly also, John Cage is also living in New York at the time, so is Merce Cunningham. So you have all these postmodern thinkers who are all collaborating with one another, right? And so they're, for lack of a better term, they're jerking each other off. They're saying like, isn't this art so highbrow? Like, haven't we thought so much about this? And hasn't this like kind of changed art history forever? And in a lot of ways it did, but what the postmodern, and I would say that contemporary art neglects a lot, is the kind of role of the audience, and has instead fulfilled the role of the audience with the curator and with the institution. And because of that, I felt that New York still lives in this very conceptual, high drive kind of place. I always made the kind of metaphor of like the brick on the floor is that like I feel like something that encapsulates New York artists a lot is that if you put a couple cinder blocks on the ground, they'll look at you and be like, well, it's a commentary on the prison system. And you'll say, those are bricks on the ground. I feel like New York is also in this kind of wall text apocalypse where you walk into a museum and you will understand nothing if you don't read a little bit about it. And I think that is different on the West Coast. There is this sensibility of having people, a stranger or just a common viewer, immediately understand something from your painting or from your image or from your work, and letting the kind of work of exploring all the intricacies of your work being done by people who really care. All to say that people have to walk away some way from your work. And I feel like in this next year, now that I'm back in California, I am trying to explore this kind of this audience that I'm trying to preach to, this mass, this kind of like, unidentified mass that I am trying to preach to. I think I'm trying to explore that through the materials I'm working in or through the places I'm going to. I've my next residency is in Winchester, Virginia, at the Peter Bullitt Foundation. It is also a kind of small rural area, small town. And I feel like that is where experimental and like crazy art is the most needed. And is kind of the most important place to like understand humanity, like when we're kind of alone and not in these urban centers, is that like who are we to care about? Or to say simply like what do normal people care about? And so trying to explore that in the next year.
What was your experience like interacting with Alchemy, like this community program we talked about interacting with like different types of public here linked to?
Totally, yeah. So the awesome thing about the artisan community thing has been this interaction with regular people and people who like know art as this kind of like movie thing in the sky. And so this movie thing that like exists in the museums, yeah. And so kind of going back to these really like fun to being like people who can like enjoy art as just like leisure, or people can enjoy art as this thing about creativity, which I think is the thing that is kind of neglected as this kind of real force that can change people better. And so it's been really cool to be around people that are just excited to be like coloring it all. And it's a real contrast from where I was, because I was working in the contemporary art scene at a nonprofit for experimental artists. And so it was all about these kind of like concepts of what people are doing. What is the artist doing? What does their work represent? And you kind of like take that all away and say like, hey, you person who's in the park today, like, would you like to come dye some things with us? There is this process that you have never interacted with. Would you like to do it with us? Which I think is really cool.
I was wondering because you said they were from a zone that like made you have been exposed to art until you were all the because Alchemy's get those experiences.
Totally, yeah. I never thought art was a viable career, or that people could actually be artists. I thought it was kind of a thing of the past. Hopefully not. The question is about how pretty are when I'm in drag.
Well, yeah, Thursday.
Right. Yeah, you'll see it on Thursday. Yeah, we has to be cheap. Yeah.
Do you have any like goals for your next residency, like in terms of like, oh, like, are you gonna, do you feel like you're gonna keep to training off this current body of work, or do you have like, are you like excited?
Sure. Yeah, to kind of project everything I said already, I really want to work with the concept of motion when I'm at my next residency. I feel like at this one, I've kind of explored motion and kind of like, I'm kind of exploring this geometry of planes and of like this kind of like weight of being taught and this kind of, I think there is this thing of like off the wall that I'm exploring in these kind of like universes that I'm setting up via planes and plane PLANAS, like kind of cross-secting kind of the XY axes. And I've done that, I think, pretty nicely with the works that I'm doing. And the next thing I want to do is kind of add a connect force to it. And so I will still be working in textiles at my next residency. My proposal for them was to make a folklorico skirt. And so those are the big Mexican folk skirts that are meant to be spun around in and then twirled. And they're very beautiful while they're in motion. And so I want to continue this trend that I'm doing of remixing and of presenting a tradition, but in a new way, in a way that I like, and in a way that will look cool in motion as well. And so I'm excited to build a bunch of skirts, spin around in them, and kind of add this kind of kinetic energy to a work. So, be conceptual again. There is also something to be said about the skirt as if it is dyed or painted to reveal the skirt as a painting or as a work of textile that should be hung in some way. I'm very interested in working with skirts and using them as costume and using them as garments, but then hanging them up on the wall as kind of tapestry in some way. And so I reject this idea of wearable art. I hate the word wearable art so much because I think it's silly. But I am interested in kind of retired garment the other way. Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
Hey, thanks, Judith. I'm gonna stop it now, and this will go on YouTube sometime in the future. All right.
Oh my gosh.